Recording now.
You're depressed.
Get business going.
7 o'clock, we have a lot to talk about, so let's get going. 7 o'clock, today is June 5th, 2025, this is the council work session. In attendance tonight, Councilperson Pincher, Councilperson Martin, Councilperson Ashton, Mayor Southern, Councilperson Cost, Councilperson Torrance, Council President Camera, we have our village, who is that? Mike Jeff, Mike, oh my God.
Mike Flickinger.
Engineer, attorney,
We have our attorney.
finance.
Jesse Shamp.
That's Jesse Shamp. We have our fiscal officer, Jeff Wilczek, and we have Leah, our clerk. Here.
Next week, we're all wearing name tags.
It's all good. I used to listen to that, and that way I could just read.
I know, right?
I stopped doing that. All right, I think we're starting with Rita tonight.
Yes.
To kick off some of the shorter topics. So.
Sure. So we had briefly discussed this at, I think it was maybe the last work session or a second meeting of the month, but not everybody was here. So Jeff and I thought we should bring it up again. So this is of course pertaining to the non-filer problem that we have in the village with residents not filing their local income taxes. So we've been kicking back and forth for, probably a year now on how to get after that. We had a meeting with Rita, they came in and talked with us. We looked at our code, we have the provisions that we need in code. And so we had Jeff and I and Leah had come up with a plan to basically get the list from Rita of everybody that had not filed during the statutorily permitted period, which I believe goes back to 2019. It's a 6-year look back. There's several hundred, many of which have not filed at all since that time frame. And so our thought was, with your blessing, was to draft a letter from me on Minerva Park letterhead, or on my firm letterhead, but without my phone number on it. To send, that's right, to batch it a bit, to batch the list from Rita into some manageable chunks so that not everybody's getting this all at once. We send a letter to 75 non-filers, 50 non-filers, and say, you have 30 days to file this with Rita and get on a payment plan for what is due, or you'll be cited into mayor's court. We have a provision in code that we can fine them on. I had it written down, and my draft is not loading, but it's up to X amount of a fine. 250. So it's a M4 misdemeanor. Nobody's going to jail on it, of course, but you're going to stack some fines for each year that you haven't filed. And that's basically it. They'd come into mayor's court. We would tell them, all right, first time in, you have 30 days to get these years filed up with Rita, or, and we're going to set it for another date within 30 days. And if you're not done at that point, we're going to want to plead on that charge, and fines start to accrue. Missing anything, Joe?
It is our intent that if they resolve the filing issue with Rita within the 30-day period, that we would waive the $250 per year fine. Unfortunately, we can't waive court costs, so they would still have to pay that. If they fail to take care of it in the 30 days, then sorry, we're not going to waive the fines. And that's on top of what Rita's going to charge penalty and interest for failure to file. Okay. Now, the other thing that we talked about, what's required is you either file a tax return or you file an exemption. And it's our feeling that if someone is eligible to file an exemption, and that's what they haven't done, they take care of it, we will waive all fines, period. Okay, because more than likely they don't have income, so I'm not trying to get blood out of the turnip here either, okay? So, the main thing that we're really after is we're trying to increase the filing compliance. I mean, we're sitting at, last night I had a report from Rita, 380 addresses where individuals have failed to file. There's only just shy of 2,000 people in this village. Do the math, that's about 20%, right? So we're trying to get that taken care of. What we really want is we want the compliance with the filing. But in this case, we have been running the subpoena program with Rita for the last 3 or 4 years, if not longer. And it's obvious when you look at the list and you see the number of people that have done nothing for 5 years. And this is 2018 through 22. Hasn't addressed 23 and 24 yet. So if, we can do the math on that. So what we're trying to do is, again, we're trying to get this cleaned up, get the filing done when it's supposed to be done. We have compliance here.
And so we bring that to you mainly because you're certain to hear about it. So we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page before we start sending out letters that say,
Hey.
yeah, it's time.
And in fairness, I will tell you, I have received emails from people that want to see this program and want to know why we haven't started it yet. It was only one person, in fairness, but I do have a resident that is
Yeah.
asking,
I mean-
when is this gonna start?
And so another, I'm gonna guess a very small portion of the non-filers, you take it to HR block and you think they're filing your taxes, and they tell you they're not doing the local municipality, but you don't hear that.
No.
And so it's just sitting there waiting for you to go get it and do it. That's not everybody, almost a guarantee it's not everybody, but perhaps, a letter and get moving. It's discouraging that the subpoena program didn't prompt them to do that, but maybe one final Hail Mary of a letter with 30 days notice does something.
The one thing that I am doing with the list is those individuals on the list, I'm comparing it to the tax duplicate and the names on the tax duplicate to ensure that we have a valid person at that address. There are a number of addresses and individuals that are on this list that no longer live in this village. So that's a further conversation to have with Rita as to what, if anything, can be done there. If we don't know where we're at, we can't chase them.
Which is why we need to start this, the sooner the better, and we can continually keep up on it before they do move. Because
Once we do this for a year, it will fix itself.
I agree.
Yeah, that's right, you just have to get
And
it
again,
going.
I do know, I've not seen everything, but I will say that there are people on there that there are errors. There have been deceased people on there have been things like that, so I know the number sounds horrific, and I believe the number is pretty horrific, but there are people, that are on there that it's just a really quick phone call that they can get removed from that, very simply. And I will just say one was because it was in my own house.
The other thing that we need to point out is,
Oh, it was.
once they get pulled into court, if not earlier, it becomes a public record. So now everybody's going to know who's not filing.
Right.
Does the list have amounts?
No.
Okay.
This is strictly for non-filers.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Right, and so I can see it already, we're gonna run into, there's gonna be the longest list of excuses you could ever imagine about how they can't go back and get their return, which isn't true.
Well, you're
This is on the
required
phone with the IRS.
3 years.
Yes.
Last night's Jeff, you're also required not to speak.
Right.
And yet,
Can we, if you're gonna send out that letter, can you just say like, here's a link for more information on the bottom?
Yes.
And then should there be like a part that says, think you got this in error, or like, are you
Correct.
actually deceased? Here's how to get your phone number.
yes, and I think I did make a draft, it was probably a month ago now, and I said to you guys,
Yeah.
when we talked to Rita, they gave us info to put in, to direct them to, because
Cause that way,
The same info's in the newsletter every month too.
what, some people are more technological, like
I realize that, but we're trying.
Right.
Check the mail. Yeah, I just wanted for us to be prepared to be like, cause I know somebody's gonna come up to me and be like, hey, what do I do now? And I can just be like, okay, like, go to this website or go to this
Yep.
page and here's the instructions. And don't get mad, it for sure could be an error.
Oh, yeah.
Just make sure you just do the thing.
There will be a million questions, because again, and I'm only speaking personally, but we never got a letter that there was an issue. And again, I'll just say, it was my ex. And
Sure.
it was cleared up, and I thought it was cleared up, and I've never received a letter at our house, but yet he was on the list.
sure.
So it was just a matter of picking up the phone, getting it taken care of, because he didn't live in the village at the time
Sure.
in which it was requesting the information. So it was just a simple error that just needed addressed, and it took 30 seconds to call him and say, you already closed his account and I don't, it just needs fixed. So there are those types of errors that are on there. So it's, there are simple fixes. But you are gonna get, so that's my point, you're gonna get a million different questions, I think.
And some of them are, the information is gonna be incorrect, and so.
Correct.
I guess anybody listening to this, sorry ahead of time if you get it and, it's supposed to, just let us know, because we're just trying to clear up this list.
Exactly.
Good.
Okay.
That's all we have. Awesome.
We move to Mark and circle back with the others.
Okay, so I'm gonna give like a really quick update of, Mike and I really didn't talk about this. I emailed him and said, do you wanna come and go over all of the projects? So hopefully we can just kind of start, and Mike is way more prepared than I am. I know, right? So we'll let him go through it, and then if you guys have additional questions at the end. Mike, are you just gonna kind of hit like one project at a time?
Yeah.
And just where we are and all of that? So if we can just kind of let him get through that. I know I might have a question or two on one of them, but take it and run.
All right, so I just put together a number of slides, not that they're like a great PowerPoint presentation or anything, but more just to help steer the conversation and just make sure that there were things that we didn't overlook or whatever. So brief agenda is just an overview of the open task orders, an overview of potential task orders, and then just a general discussion and then summary and action items. So we're going to work through these sequentially. So task order number 28 is the Minerva Lake Road improvements. So just as a reminder for everybody, the project overview, it's basically a full reconstruction of Minerva Lake Road from Barbie Road to State Route 3. It has roadway improvements, drainage improvements, pedestrian improvements. So by pedestrian improvements, we're currently showing a standard 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk. The budget status, I listed the budget status as of May 23rd because that's when our accounting month ended, and that's the last invoice that we submitted is for work through May 23rd. So that project had a total fee of $75,000. You can see we invoiced just under $75,000 or $70,000, and there's a typo there. Actually, I think the total fee should be $75,500 because there's $5,500 remaining that we're not invoicing. We completed the work and we just didn't spend that money, so that'll go back into the coffers. The project status is the design and the bidding is complete. If you recall, we combined the project with task order number 34 to encourage more bidders, so we packaged two projects together to make it one bigger project to hopefully entice more people to submit bids. Previous roadway project, we got 2 bidders. This one we got 3 bidders, so I guess we could say maybe it worked. It's not so much the Minerva Lake Road project, I think that benefited from it, but it's task order 34 later, which is the Northland Plaza Drive. We probably wouldn't have seen 3 bidders on that job. So we'll talk about that when we talk about task order number 34, but I think there was a benefit there. Right now, my understanding is just awaiting the legislation process to allow the mayor to enter into an agreement with the recommended contractor. And then for the project next steps, I noted that we'll discuss that with task order number 34 a few slides farther down.
So just to alleviate any confusion, that part of Northland Plaza Drive, I think switches names into, what is it now?
Grandview,
Dublin Grandview. It's like old Dublin Grandview or
I'm not
something.
sure if it's old.
But it is there's a part of old Northland Plaza that is Columbus. That part is ours. For any questions on why we're even discussing that, that part is our part and it is beat up and it needed to be replaced, but it's too small of a project. So if you combine it with a bigger project, hopefully, you can get it done.
Yeah,
in a more cost efficient manner.
it's odd that that's the name that it has, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason, that's the name that it
Is
has.
it so? I think it did it not
Like,
change. I
All
swear
those
it changed.
businesses there don't have that as their address.
Yeah, but that's what it's called. It's a weird spot, so. At least that's what all the project records still show it as being.
I think it's Minerva Lake.
I
So,
wish there was a governmental body that could change the name of
We
streets.
probably.
Can we?
I think it's East Dublin Granville Road is what it turned into.
Well, look at Landscape's address. and-
East Dublin Granville Road.
Well,
I think their address is East Dublin Granville
Yeah.
Road, but
Google Maps says it turns into.
yeah, but Google Maps also has street names
Yeah.
in the village wrong, so.
Correct.
but I also think that if you look at the last sign, the last road sign says North
So we
Plaza
don't
Drive.
know, but basically that part is River Park property and not Columbus property, just for anybody who thinks that we're just spending money on things that aren't ours, just to alleviate any confusion here.
From Ponderosa.
From Ponderosa on, yes, correct. Just
So, any
not repeating them all, sorry.
questions on task order number 28? Like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about this.
So this is the one that we have legislation for, to accept the bid. Have we, because you guys were asking about this, or we're going to. You guys were asking exactly what was entailed in some of the bid stuff. Now would be a great time to ask that. I don't remember what the question was, but I know we just talked about it and you guys were questioning
I think we-
something. I don't
I
remember.
think we had, as council, we had asked about certain additions potentially. And if those were even communicated or,
Which ones?
well, we talked about
The
the
light.
marquee at the end. And we talked about possibly street lighting along that route, so, yeah.
And the other thing was, also during that project, we had talked about asking them to go over to Blex, that low area. I kind of wanted to bring that up because we kind of talked about that more internally.
Yeah.
Can you, are we gonna have them go over and at least
Well,
look at it, or?
I was not comfortable talking to them about potentially adding scope before you have an agreement.
Okay, that's fine.
But then once you have an agreement, then we can talk to them about potential scope additions.
And that's for the area over by yours, because we would already have somebody out here. So just kind of wanted to give you guys heads up of where that is, because I know we've talked about that multiple times and I haven't had an answer for you. And that's kind of what we were thinking that we would do, but like you said, we haven't signed it yet, but we will try that route as a first step.
Through talking over the years with Jesse and Steve and other people in your office, we're very particular about potential changes in the project before there's an
Yes,
agreement in
I
place.
don't
So that
disagree.
anyone can, just to eliminate a bidder saying, hey man, if I would have done that, my price might have come down because we would have had,
I agree.
my unit price might have come down, so.
Okay.
So I saw sidewalks in the bids. I heard them say sidewalks, but I thought that we were going to hold off on sidewalks because of the Linkus project. Is
So
that correct?
we were asked to keep the sidewalks in the bid to get a price.
Okay,
Just because it's in there doesn't mean you have to perform it.
okay.
You could just non-perform the work.
Well,
Just as a cautionary tale, it will be more expensive if you wait.
And I thought that when you were here the last time, we said, you talked about how we would have, that the sidewalks would be presented as an add-on, like here it is with, here's the price without it, or where we would have the option to do it, which was kind of how we did this building. It was a, hey, here are 6 additional options, let's decide which ones you guys want.
So we included it in the price, and then if you do not want it, you just say, we don't want to perform that work, and then the quantity just goes to 0 and you don't pay that. Because the challenge is if you put too many, you don't want to have a lot of alternates when you bid, because it makes deciding who the low bidder is very difficult. Because you have to be very, very clear in your basis of bids to say, this is how we will award the project. And sometimes some clients will try to say things like, any or all combinations, and then you get into a matrix, and then you can't really tell who's the low bidder. And it just opens yourself up to protests. So we try to minimize the amount of add-on alternates. We would rather, in this case, we have unit pricing, so it's a relatively easy thing to deduct from the. So what you would do is you would execute the agreement for the price that's bid. And then if you decide to not move forward with the sidewalks, if you non-perform those sidewalks, you just write a change order telling the contractor we are not going to perform this work, so then they know not to perform the work. And then at the end of the project, when you true up all the quantities, then you write a change order at the end of the job to true everything up.
This is random, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, I'm sure you do, but is the sidewalk just on the one side of the street in this bid? Okay.
It's just on the north side of
Which
the
is
street.
what we discussed.
Yeah.
And sidewalks that are in the bid total $44,000, and that would have to be paid for by general fund, or from the general fund.
Not from the road, not the streets fund, or
Yeah.
streets fund, not from the streets fund is what you're
Correct.
saying. Yeah, because it's not a street,
Right.
which makes sense, obviously. Now, and I don't know if anyone in this room knows the answer to this question, but if we can get funding from this LINCIS system and all that, is that even a possibility? Is it, we can apply for it, and if we've already done the project, or if the project's
Can
in
we get a
process,
rebate?
can we get it applied towards it, or, I don't know?
I don't know how to answer that question, but typically, a grant will not cover something already done.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured.
And honestly, I don't even know if they have that program, or those program requirements figured out yet. I mean, it just got voted on in November. I don't know when it officially became, do you know when the sales tax increase officially went into practice? Was it July 1st? January 1st?
April.
It wasn't January, yeah, it was
I want to say March.
April 1st, I know for a
Of
fact
this
that-
year?
Yeah, because I ordered something, and when I ordered it, it was 7.5, and they gave me an estimate, and when I got it, it went up to 8, and I was like,
Yeah, so I would venture to guess by the time there's money, think how long it's gonna take to generate anything.
Yeah.
okay.
So in the beginning of April, and then they're planning 11 projects, one of them being our neighborhood. This is from Columbus Underground, 11 projects to start with.
If they do that, can we build the other side of the sidewalk from, like, if we only do one side, and then if we get grant funding, can we just plan to do the other side then? Because we're already linked.
I will say that we didn't lay the project out to have sidewalks on both sides,
Okay, so we messed up, okay.
so.
And then what about the Safe Sidewalks to School? Didn't we apply for a grant or some funding with them?
We have been in discussion with them, but it has nothing to do with Minerva Lake Road.
Okay.
Because this project was already going on, this project was already going on, so that has nothing to do with Minerva Lake Road.
Okay.
So we have been in discussion with them for months. Barb probably has more up-to-date information on that, but we've been talking to them about over there.
So are we just trying to figure out if there's any other sources of funding that we can get?
I think
it's
that's always
that's
something
always-
to
yeah.
discuss, right?
So I guess it's something that, if you guys hear anything, or if there's something that's like a low lying, like, hey, this is easy and we qualify, let's do this.
Well, for things like that, it's Safe Routes to Schools and now the LinkUs program. Those are
Okay.
generally the two most straightforward ways to try to procure outside funding for this. The Safe Routes to School, though, my understanding is you have to coordinate with the school district and make
Yes.
sure that they've identified your specific pathways as priorities for them. So if they don't have it in their program, I don't think you can qualify for the money.
It's a process. It has been a nonstop process it has been, they're extremely helpful and it's been great, but I think the questions and concerns are, what is Linkus gonna do? There's so many different moving parts, and I think you've got so many different people working in so many different avenues, and that's not a bad thing, but just trying to coordinate the limited staff of what can we move forward with. So even if we get all this money, you still have to have an engineer, they don't do all of that. So is that something that Mike can take on? Who's gonna start helping us do that? And same thing, and I don't know exactly where we are with that, maybe this is a great time to ask, but Linkus, this is a project that they're talking about, but is this something that they're gonna do all of the engineering work, or that's something we have to get through you? They're just gonna give us money for it. We still have to do
I think you're gonna have to apply for money. It'll be like most every other grant program that like Jeff and I have worked with, or that
Yeah.
worked with Jesse, where and I suspect there's an application process and you have
Yes.
to lay out, this is what it's gonna cost us for engineering, this is what it's gonna cost us for
Right.
land acquisition, this is what it's gonna cost us for construction, this is what it's gonna cost us for services during construction, this is what it's gonna cost us for legal fees.
Right. Because I feel like right now, the main thing that Eric's been talking about is just the Minerva Lake Road. Because if you guys remember, the battle that we had was, we want concrete, we do not want a walking path down through there. And so that has been very, very firm from all of the conversations that we've had. So
Yeah.
that does change it a little, that changed some of Eric's thoughts.
So I would note that, the grant application, the funding application that the village submitted to to Morpsey for OPWC funding. It included the sidewalks. So that's, that's lumped into the funding, let's call it the funding award for now. I think
We're
we're
saying it was not.
no,
No, it was. So that could potentially change the amount of money for the grant then?
Oh.
Yes, no?
no, I mean, it was in it. All-
No, I'm saying if we don't do it.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Wait, I thought we didn't get them.
No, it was a different variation of what we thought it was. No, we did. Do you want to go over that a tiny
Can you
bit?
clarify that, so there's,
I mentioned that the last time we were here.
sorry.
So
You're
when
fine.
the application was initially submitted
Mhm.
for review, what was asked for is a $600,000 loan, $400,000 grant.
Okay,
That's what was approved.
okay.
But what was posted to the website was $1 million grant and a $100,000 loan.
That's wrong.
Which
So
made
we're
Jeff
now
and me
back
very,
at the 600 and 400.
it made Jeff and me very excited. Because that freed up money for additional roadway projects.
So again, we have a $400,000 grant and a $600,000 loan. The loan, because it's covering road reconstruction, will be repaid out of the street fund for the next 27 years.
Okay, so final question about this, and then you guys can ask. Sorry, I'm full of questions tonight. When does council need to make a decision about the sidewalks? Is that something that in legislation they should spell out that we might not want? And I don't want to speak for you guys, but, or is that something that at some point we just tell you? Is that something that, when should they decide if they want to take all their chances on Linkus or if they want to move forward with the sidewalks? Because I think is that the only thing you guys are questioning right now?
I would,
I have no problem with
I would defer to legal counsel, but I would just recommend not putting that in any legislation.
Okay.
And letting that be handled
Right.
via contract administration.
So just have them pass legislation like we normally would, and if they then decide to come to me and say, hey, we really want to talk about these sidewalks, then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But I just wanted you guys to have the
But,
information.
so that council is aware, you should make that decision by July 1st.
Okay,
Oh,
If you want to put the sidewalks in.
Yeah.
you mean if you don't want to put the sidewalks in? Right now they're in.
Either way, like if you tell me one or the other, and the reason I say July 1st is because that's the earliest you can execute an agreement with
Right.
OPWC.
Mhm.
And so our intent is to issue a notice to proceed in July.
Okay, we're in a work session, so am I allowed to say this? I mean, at this point, leave it as is. Whatever is bid on is what they're going to, what I'm
Yeah,
putting in as far as
Oh, yeah.
legislation. So unless you hear from us, move
Okay.
forward the way that it is. Is that a fair statement?
With
And can I say that here?
sidewalks that are concrete.
What, you guys are going to pass legislation based on the bid?
So we're gonna have two readings, and then that's pass it as a, waiting the third reading and pass as a.
We would like to just get it done this week, to be honest with you, but that's entirely up to you.
I would like to have the legislation on for next council meeting.
Do you had mentioned getting it passed, but is that something you still want to try to do, or do the 3?
Well, if you do 3, now you're into July.
Well, we definitely want that.
Well, and I recommended
So-
one reading and then do a second and suspend the rules and wait the third.
Yeah, wait, third, yeah.
That's what I would prefer to do.
Okay.
I want to give our residents time.
At the end of, pass it at the second January.
And if they want to go to a meeting.
But at the, sorry, Jeff.
We'll get ordinance for approval for next meeting.
We'd already talked about that today to have it on there,
Yes.
on the agenda for
But are
Thursday.
you intending to pass it as an emergency?
On the 26th.
Or just waive the third reading?
No,
It then passes in emergency on the 26th.
Yes.
That would be great.
yes, that
I mean, that.
would be the goal. Yeah.
It's better for the contractor, it's better for us, but I felt like I was asking a lot by waiving the third reading, so I didn't want to be the one that
I mean-
said, well, you passed it as an emergency.
Like I will say, I will say that's gonna be requested from admin, and then they will make the decision. If they don't wanna do it, then that's up to them.
And it's important to note too that OPWC places restrictions on the time involved.
Correct.
So that kind of,
Necessitates, makes it an emergency.
yes.
So, Mike, can you explain what, I guess, task order 34 portion,
No, because we're not there yet.
the North End Road portion looks like.
It's
Well,
in
it's
the-
no, he said they tapped it in here too.
He said it's in a further down slideshow, Jason. You wanna skip?
Is there an expectation?
This is like my mind's all blown outside.
How long will task order 28 likely take?
To build?
Correct.
I think we allocate, I don't have the document in front of me, I can pull up what we said, but I think we allowed 120 days of construction.
Yeah, because they closed the one side of the road and then they closed the other side of the road, and I think there was mail.
Yeah, that's something that we're gonna have to
Coordinations.
still coordinate between the contractor and the post office.
And the school, like the buses and all, yeah,
Tommy, if you give me the chance later, I'll
No,
just.
that's fine.
I think it's 120 days.
Okay, keep going.
We can do that.
I really just kind of want to know, we knew that we had talked about that project. Originally, we thought it was going to be a little further down the road, or not, we didn't know until recently that they were going to get together, which is fine. But we don't know what the scope of work is, like what are we planning to do? We've heard different things, is it just being resurfaced, is there any storm sewers happening on that road? Can you kind of fill us in on what that is?
Sure can. So task order 34 is Northland Plaza Drive improvement. So its project overview is it's just full reconstruction of the road from Ponderosa to Farview. No real drainage improvements, no pedestrian improvements, basically just ripping up the road that's there, putting it more or less back in the same general alignment, same general configuration. When I say there's no drainage improvements, by that I mean we're not adding any storm sewers, we're not adding any catch basins, manholes, etc. But we're improving the drainage insofar as we're sloping the road, like crowning the road so water can flow off to the sides, because that's part of the problem that's going out there.
Does that include a curb of any kind, or? Okay.
No curb, no gutter, nothing, just basically putting it back.
Gutter is really what I meant.
Yeah, just basically putting it back exactly how it, generally, I should say, more or less how it looks today.
And this is not just resurfacing the road, we're
This is
gonna rebuild it.
We're gonna tear it all the way back, we're gonna tear it down to the sub base and build it completely back up.
And are we doing it with the same standards that we've been trying to do with our road improvements, where we had that better base on it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
will they do those simultaneously, or will they do like Minerva Lake Road and then, not that you would know the answer to this, but, or will they do the Northland Plaza first? Do we have an idea?
I don't know how they intend to do it. That was gonna be one of the first things I was gonna ask them once I sent them the documents to execute, just be like, hey, just out of curiosity. That might would that be a reasonable question to ask today, or would you prefer I wait until legislation?
It's reasonable, but let's just wait. I don't think it's gonna change in 2 weeks. Yeah.
I think, and I don't, maybe we've done this, but as a village, I'm not sure that we communicated to any of those businesses that this project was coming. So I also feel like we need to communicate, there's a funeral home there, that's a pretty good business, I'm not as concerned with Inskeep or, not that I'm not concerned, but, they don't, a lot less traffic, right? To interrupt their business.
Yeah.
So I feel like we need to communicate that to them if we have them. If this
We have not.
Yeah, well, that's to the village, I mean, in general. And then I think the other thing, just kind of going, since we're on street projects in general, have we communicated to that apartment building that's at the end of Minerva Lake Road about this project?
I would assume not, because they're not even in the village,
Okay.
technically.
They park
I know.
very heavily on the road overnight. I think they don't have enough parking in their parking lot. And a lot of those residents that rent those apartments are parking on the street. And it is going to interrupt their life, because I don't think there's enough parking, to be honest, in that apartment complex. So I feel like as good neighbors, we probably should let them know sooner than later.
Good point.
I don't have any questions on this unless someone else has. I'm 34.
Yeah.
You can go back to where I'm
So I'll just give everybody a quick budget status update. So our total fee for this project was $65,000. We've invoiced to date about $58,500. So there's about $6,500 remaining on this project. I'll have some time between now and start up, because the document preparation and all that stuff is included in this scope of work, so Jacobs will have some expenditures against this to complete it. We're currently working on a scope and a fee for services during construction to provide the inspection services. The intent is to combine both projects, services during construction into one. That's my goal, but I need to talk to Jeff about that to figure out the best way to do that, so it can be, the accounting can happen correctly between what is considered to be part of task order or Minerva Lake Road and what's part of Northland Plaza. So the way we bid these projects is we bid them with like basically part 1 and part 2, so that when it comes time for a contractor to invoice it and they submit the paperwork, Jeff can look at part 1 and say, okay, this is the OPWC part, and we can mess with that. And he's like, this is part 2, this is completely self-funded. You don't have to do anything, so. Project status, and again, this is for 28 and 34. The bidding is complete. Strasser Paving Company was the apparent low bidder at a little under $1,800,000. When you have unit prices on roadway jobs, they go out to the decimal point. We recommended awarding the project to Strasser. Strasser's done work in the village of Minerva Park before. They do a lot of work here in central Ohio for some of the larger subdivisions. I think they're pretty much have seems like they have a nice running hold on, say, the city of Dublin's street maintenance program. So they're used to multi-million-dollar projects working in multiple areas. Legislation process in progress to authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement. So I noted the next steps are just finalizing the contract paperwork. So once the village says, yep, this legislation has passed and it's in effect, we'll put together the contract documents. We'll send those over to the contractor, get their execution, and they send it back to the village staff that's needed to execute that. And then we work on developing a certain number of notices. There's a notice of commencement that allows you to, or allows contractors to, or not contractors, but maybe it allows people to apply liens to the project if necessary. We'll work with the general contractor to start communicating detours to the public and outside entities. So by outside entities, I noted like the first responders, the schools. We've had conversation with Westerville City School District during both of these projects, just basically telling them it's coming and like what detours like, would you like to see. So I don't know if you remember, but we did actually switch the direction on the one-way direction on Minerva Lake Road during construction, in part based on feedback from the school district, because they said they would prefer their school buses to not have to turn left across State Route 3. So originally that was the one-way traffic we had leaving the village, and residents chimed in too, but the school district was a pretty big player in that, saying, hey, we'd rather come in than go out across State Route 3. So they're pretty appreciative of the fact that we reached out to them. They actually seemed kind of surprised, but I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
See if they'll replace the trees and fence, because we're.
Right.
And then they just noted, or I said, we anticipated notice to proceed in mid-July. So.
So, here's one point. Of the $1,797,000, Northland Plaza, part of the project is $476,000, whereas Minerva Lake Road is $1,321,000. And Minerva Lake Road includes some water line, sanitary sewer, storm sewer in there, besides the road improvements. So there will be multiple sources of funding used for Minerva Lake Road. to cover that.
We were estimating 1.4, so came a little under that.
Well, a couple of years ago, it was 750,000.
Sure.
So,
We're losing money by not.
28 came in a little lower than we originally were discussing, and 34 came in just a little bit higher than we were originally discussing. So overall, it came out about right. It was 2.2% over the engineer's estimate, which in today's bidding climate is pretty good. Any questions on Northland Plaza? Jeff, I will talk to you before we do before we submit our scope and our fee for services during construction. My plan was to make it a contract modification to task order number 34, since task order number 34 is already open. And that's what we've done with previous roadway projects. But if you think it's better for your own accounting and for having the back and forth with OPWC, we could make it task order 38, so it's completely separate from those two design projects.
Yes,
So just let me know which direction you prefer to go.
next week we can talk on that one, okay? I actually had your engineering services listed as immediate.
All right, so task order number 30 is the maintenance building. So project overview is a 2,700 square foot maintenance building with some office space and some storage space. Has some associated site and utility improvements. So really utility improvements are just providing services to the site. The budget status as of 05/23, the total fee is $120,000. The total amount invoiced to date is about $78,500. Total amount remaining is about $41,500, plus or minus. Project status is the contractor is under agreement and started submittals and some minor site work while awaiting the building permit. The next steps include securing a building permit. The resubmittal is currently in Glendon Township right now. Crossing my fingers, we have their response by the end of this week. They're pretty good. The village has been working on an expedited permit review, or actually, let me say that. The village filled paperwork out previously for expedited permit review. So the last time they got back to us within a week, which is pretty good. So I submitted this to them on Sunday, so Monday, business day. And so I'm hopeful that we can get something back from them by the end of this week. And then we're finalizing the utility service connection, so we needed to get a little bit of feedback from the building department before we started submitting applications for the utilities. Got some guidance from the village as to who to list for billing contacts and stuff like that. So we've submitted the service connection application for Columbia Gas to get natural gas service to the site. We will submit to AEP for electricity and Columbus Water and Power.
Yeah.
Columbus Water and Power for water service. So we'll get those applications in probably no later than mid next week. So it's kind of this job, I will admit, it's been a bit of a struggle just internally. We just weren't as responsive to the building permit comments as we typically would be. It's been a lot of, it's kind of came at a bad time. We had some PTO and some overseas travel and just.
Well, they also went through their change of people as well.
Yeah, but I wish we could have turned around the first building, or turned around the resubmittal a little bit quicker than we did. Probably a couple weeks behind where I'd prefer to be on the submittal. So.
And then just to go over this a little bit, we had quite a bit of resident concern. And when one of the subcontractors showed up out there and started clearing some of the debris, not the trees, but some of the debris, and they did not notify us that they were coming out. We've known that they were coming, but I think we've posted multiple times on the village website that said, this is gonna start, and we quit doing that because we thought it was gonna start in March or April. So we kind of quit doing that. So it was a little bit of a surprise to us when they did show up. They did apologize and all of that. Eric did talk to them. Eric went out there, met with them to make sure everything was on par. There was some confusion with, I'm speaking in my terms, my way, but there was some confusion that the original drafts were posted online. The actual bid documents were not posted online, which a lot of times we don't post everything online because that was the original start of everything. The original plans were the plans from January that was posted. We had our meeting in March when residents came in. In March, that's when we announced you guys if you guys wanted it closer to the road or further back. As you guys may or may not remember, I know Tony, you're new, but you guys also thought that it would be smarter to move it further back. That's what was sent out to bid. That is what was being done. So we have since posted that stuff online as well. One of the questions and that some people had been a little concerned about is on the original plan, which again, the original plan is completely, that was just a draft, was the original plan, and that's what we came through and addressed, because that's not what we wanted. But the question was, one of the questions was, they were putting a new road in that was a little bit further away from the resident's home. The new plan that is putting it further back is actually using that access road, is that correct?
It's in the same general location.
In the same general location. So I think that the residents may prefer if it could be moved over a little bit, but I would say, and maybe you could answer this, it is gonna be more costly to the village if we move it over, because essentially you're gonna be moving it over but then back. Is that correct?
Yeah, one of the things that we discussed when the building was in its original location was moving the curb cut, so moving the entrance from its current location a little bit, a little bit more on the corner. What that did though is you're going through, like that's the steepest part of the site, and so we were cutting through that hilly like area up there. So when we were asked to move the building to the back, it didn't make sense to keep the driveway all the way over there because we were trying to minimize the overall cost, but then also it really just made the driveway easier to not have to go through that steeper part. That was always going to be a bit of a challenge to tie it in. It doesn't mean that you couldn't tie it in, but that was always going to be a little bit of a challenge. And then also there was just talk about like, if we could avoid that planted area over there. I don't know how great people might think it is, but we were asked if we could to avoid that planted area. And so that's another reason why we put it in the same general alignment as the beat up access drive that's there. It doesn't mean that has to be the exact location. It's a thing that we could talk to the, if council, or I'll just say in general, if the village directs us to look at something different, we can look at something different and get a quote for it and see, if you guys are interested in moving it, we could come up with an alternative and ask the contractor to price it, and then the village could determine if it's cost, if you want to pay the potential price difference to do it.
Okay. Again, I'm just relaying some information because this isn't like a back and forth and everything. That was just a question that someone had brought to my attention, and I wanted to make sure I at least asked and you guys were aware that that was a question that was asked to me.
So that's the mechanism by which you could get a price.
And then the final thing that was asked to me, and this is something that I'm going to, I'm not trying to make this any longer than it already is, but it has been, the residents on Jordan Road have been asking for some trees and things like that to be replaced as part of that project. We did this has nothing to do with you. We did that project, we removed all of those trees, we removed all of the debris, and now we can see all the way to Cleveland Avenue. There's, everybody that cuts through Cleveland Avenue cuts right through our yards. There's no stopping anybody. They have been asking. This is something that I'm not gonna do tonight, but I'm going to be bringing something to your guys' attention if we can put some things up. It's also been brought to, if we are removing quite a bit of these trees to put this maintenance garage, is this something that there's not really a big, landscape plan with the maintenance garage? Pretty accurate?
There's no.
There you go. So if that's something that we could start working on as well, internally, that would be great.
I think, based off some NPCA discussions, that there are several grants out there for trees that we could probably.
But can we get trees?
Yes.
Not,
what they've been planting out there.
Yes.
There are larger trees. I don't know what size trees we're looking for.
Right.
Are we talking like what was planted on the sidewalks of MI section?
and that's stuff that you guys can discuss.
Are we talking even more mature trees than that?
I think it's a conversation that, I just wanted to bring it to your attention because again, I said that I would bring it, and this is not the only project that is in need of the finishing touches. I feel like we get these projects done, and then because it's everything that we have to get them done, and then we miss that final step, and that, I feel like that is something that we are failing on, and this is another one of those projects that I feel like just getting a few more final touches at the end of it has nothing to do with you, but I just wanted to point it out.
New guy here.
New guy.
I'm looking at the pictures here, so speaking of landscaping, where is the building going compared to the road, the little pathway?
Can you go on, I'm gonna see if I can, if you're on under, go to the website, I'm gonna see if I can just pull you into.
Sure. Sorry, it wasn't working out.
It might not be. Or do you by any chance have it on there? No, you're fine, if not.
I'm just run like Google Maps.
I was just looking at Google Maps, so.
No, look right here.
Sorry, guys,
No, you're good.
I was just curious because there's some pretty decent looking trees there. And the landscaping that I think you mentioned earlier looks pretty decent too. So it's not like it's inconceivable that could just be what we need, right? Specifically related to the landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should not be touched at all then.
I mean, that looks decent. I don't know how old it is, but.
Yeah, up by the street, none of that, yeah, that's what he's talking about. He
Yeah.
doesn't want to go into that to put the,
I don't blame him at all.
yeah, this is the access road, he's not wanting to put the
Where's the
access road
building going? to?
back, all the way back.
To the
So
right.
back here?
Yes.
Look up,
Is it going
There
behind
you
the
go.
house?
Yes,
yeah,
out of sight, out of mind, yep.
except for the people who live there.
Yikes, that's fun.
I don't know if you can see it on there.
It'll come back,
It's
it'll come back.
all good. I just wanted to ask because I saw the landscaping since you guys mentioned it.
So I have a better idea here in a second.
And then we have the next one, I don't know what it is. Yeah, I think it looks next.
So yeah, we should do some landscaping. Trees are good.
No, I can't, it won't let me open it either.
You know, the Wi-Fi is funky tonight.
Yeah, mine's not working,
Who needs internet?
right?
Generally,
I
So the
think,
building is going right behind.
so the original plan is it was almost going next to the houses,
Yes.
and that was determined that when, number one, it's just very visible from the street, so the MI homes would be able to, it would be harder to hide a lot of the maintenance garage stuff. So it'd be kind of like putting, I know you'll understand this, we'd originally talked about having it over by the pool. So could you imagine if, it's the same type of thing, we were trying to put it back away.
And so right there in that, right where your hand is now, basically,
That's the building.
That is
there's
the
a
building.
nice pine tree there and there's landscaping in the front which you have identified.
Yes.
So what are the landscaping what we need?
That's what we're talking about. I'm just saying it's something we need to discuss, we haven't.
Okay, yeah.
So that just needs to be like
there's
project
no
number 2.
There's no landscaping really in the front.
Right.
What trees are, like, I know that's some scaling right there to your right, kind of the middle. Is there trees, are you gonna take out all those
Oh,
trees?
yeah. The whole 2,700 square feet of the building, there's gonna be trees
Oh,
removed
yeah,
from
yeah,
that
yeah,
area.
yeah, yeah.
And I will, after going out to that particular area, not everything is dead or dying, but there is a lot of dead and dying things that are in need of coming down, just kind of like it was around here.
Are we putting trees between this building and the house in front of it?
So that's what we have to discuss, we haven't done that.
So that's the landscape?
That's the landscaping we're talking about, to replace some of those missing trees.
Gotcha.
Just to be
Yes.
clear, we did talk to the residents and this is the best.
They were cool.
All right, next. Does anybody have any more questions about that?
Nope.
Task order number 31, the lake improvements design. So the project overview is, we're under agreement to develop preliminary plans for a comprehensive dredging project to be used in the Clean Water Act, Section 404/401 nationwide permit application. Those of you who have been around this project know that we've been working on master plans and alternatives for this dredging project for a few years now. But for this particular task order, the total fee is currently sitting at $219,500. We've invoiced approximately $89,000. So we're currently showing about $130,500 left, approximately. Project status, just telling everybody where we stand currently. The threatened and endangered species coordination, that's complete. That's a requirement of applying for that permit, or applying for that nationwide permit. The architectural and historical resources field work is complete, so that's something that's required as part of that permit application. The archaeological resources field work is complete, so again, that's another component of applying for that nationwide permit. The preliminary hydraulic model research is complete. So as part of the design, we need to figure out how we're going to maintain the stormwater during construction, because if you remember the North Lake is where all of the stormwater in the northern part of the village comes in, but it's also where all the stormwater from Highwood Apartments comes in. It's where all the stormwater from Northland Plaza comes in. So all of that stuff comes into the village. And that's why we had to do that, pretty significant stormwater improvements project along the back properties of Jordan Road that the mayor was referencing just a few minutes ago. So it's a pretty significant inflow for the village. So part of any construction that we'd have to do, we'd have to figure out how to maintain that stormwater during construction, because you can't just pretend it's not coming in. So the next steps currently is to complete the architectural, historical, and archaeological reports and submit those to the Ohio Historic Preservation Office. So that our permitting team in Cincinnati is just about finished with that. And then we need to complete the hydraulic modeling, and then we need to actually do the preliminary design for the dredging project. So if you recall, the intent of what we were asked to do is not to produce bidding documents. We weren't going to go out to bid, but rather have enough information on paper to apply for the permit so that you could secure the permit. And then the permit is good for 5 years. You have to start construction within 5 years. And then that way you would have, basically 5 years, really 4, because you still have to finish parts of the design, but basically 4 years to figure out where your funding is coming from, if you have any funding, what type of project you want to do, and then you already have the permit. Right? Because the permitting process, because you're going for a nationwide permit, the permitting process is generally a 6-month process. So, if you recall when we were talking about doing individual permit, that's basically a 12-month process. So because of the project that the village asked us to consider, which is basically maintenance dredging, you would be able to qualify for a nationwide permit, so the shorter review time. However, this next bullet point I put on here, talk about this in a later slide, but basically the village is at a decision point right now. We have not started detailed design in earnest. So there's, as I mentioned, there's still basically $130,000 of our fee sitting there unused. The reason I point that out is because there are some problems I'm going to get to in a later slide, but I think council has been made aware of them, and even Councilman, I think Grant mentioned this too, mentioned this last year after one of the larger rain events. There's some potential erosion happening downstream of the spillway, and then there's also some erosion happening along one of the pedestrian paths in the MI Homes development. We can talk about it when we get to those slides, but council might decide that those are more pressing issues and maybe require attention faster than maybe the dredging permit or the dredging project, just based on immediacy, funding. We don't need to rehash the entire lake improvements master plan, but if you recall, to dredge both lakes, you're looking at basically a $4 million to $5 million project, and that's just the ante. That's basically the least amount of money that you're going to spend. If you wanted to do what a lot of council really would have liked to done if money were no object. You know, you're looking at a $7 million project, $8 million project. So the village is gonna have to, collectively, you're gonna have to make a decision, in my opinion, about where you best wanna allocate your currently available resources and, you know, see if there's a different use for them.
And it's, I'm not gonna speak for Mike, but in the 6 years that I've been here, we've not found an available grant for actual dredging. We've never found one. We found one for forebay, or not necessarily forebays itself, but there's, you know, walking paths around it or multiple projects that support that project, but to actually help with that $4 million, we've never found anything of any sort that would help do that. With some of the erosion, and I know JP is actually, and Tommy, you very well may have been also, but you've been, and correct me if I'm wrong, are we also talking about when you like walk down around the spillway, or, you know, when the dam, when you walk through there and you're going through, like, all of that area, that's like, you can see the path, where it's all
The
eroding.
slide that I have doesn't go down that far. I only focused on like what you see from the spillway, but if you were to do a project, you would look at
All of
a
that.
comprehensive project, because as we've discussed many times, you know, usually when you have a project, one of the most expensive prices you have is just getting the equipment to the site.
Right.
Right, so the point I always try to make to council is if you have a mill and fill pavement project on Minerva Lake Road, it costs that contractor the same amount of money to bring that piece of equipment to the job site if he mills 1 foot or he mills the entire road. It costs him the exact same amount of money, and it costs him the exact same amount of money to take it back. So when you bring, you know, contractors on site, you try to stuff as much into the stack that you can to be cost effective with your money.
And this is potentially more of a safety hazard versus it's not that like we're trying to do this because it's pretty, or we want to make it look pretty. We're actually doing it because it's falling in, is a nice way to say it.
Yeah, like
I'm saying this for the record, we're not doing it because we want to, we're doing
Right.
it, basically, this is something that we've realized that we're gonna have to do for safety purposes.
will the term be emergent?
Emergent.
Like it could be a more emergent.
Right. And obviously, we've watched this probably over the last 2 years drastically. Do we expect, I mean, obviously, are we talking, we have a year, 2 years? I know you can't put a total time on it, but is it something that we've watched it in the last 2 years make a huge change? I love putting you on the spot.
No, the word, so I sent some preliminary pictures to a person in our Cincinnati office that does a lot of this work for Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. So this is kind of like in his wheelhouse. And his words were, that erosion looks gnarly.
It does. Yeah.
And it might have been because you saw the roots, which were gnarled. I don't know if he is a dad. I don't know if it was a cool dad joke or if it was just.
It's not good.
What's the fix for it? Like, in general, I don't need all the details, what's the general fix for it?
I mean, do we go throw some dirt up there? Do we?
I legitimately,
Concrete?
I don't know. I mean, we've spent like no effort looking into it. So I'm not really sure exactly what the problem is. But normally, when you're looking at a situation like that, I think you're looking at some form of like slope stability, and you're looking at, well, this, when you have a higher discharge through the spillway than just normal flow, it's, you know, they have energy dissipators in the spillway, so those are the concrete blocks that are sticking up. I mean, their primary responsibility is to make that flow slow down and dissipate that energy and settle the flow down, so when it gets into the run, it's not like eating away. Obviously, something is happening to either it's road runoff that's maybe eroding it from top down, or maybe it's a combination of road runoff spillway discharge. Usually when you get into that situation, you have to figure out how you're gonna stabilize that slope, whether it be with some form of growth. Like you can't stabilize slopes with vegetative growth. You're basically like, I think they're called soil anchors maybe, and then you grow like vegetation through it. I'm way far out on a limb here. But there's slope stabilization. There's basically just building some form of wall, you know, where it's just like you create, in effect, like a flat face and you fill everything in behind it. It's basically retaining. It just becomes like a big retaining wall. So, I mean, there are ways to do it, but anything that you do there is going to be very difficult just because there's no good access. So that's kind of why, that's what I was saying earlier, like the equipment that you bring in to do something like this, you want to make it an efficient use of bringing it.
I'm just wondering, if what we dredge out of the lake can be kind of thrown in there instead of us having to treat it and send it off.
No, I wouldn't use that dredged material for anything.
So on that south side of the spillway, that's, you know, we're talking about erosion that's happening due to storms and weather that we're not taking into consideration at the time. And it is literally just taking out that whole south side where the pathway is at. What I've seen in the past, and I looked a little bit of research, they typically take something like a fence, you know, with like long rebarb, and it'll anchor that down, and that fence type metal will hold that in place. But that can only go so long. So this is, I'm not an engineer, but I just kind of did a little research.
Yeah, that's one way you can do it. I mean, you're basically, you're in effect, you're catching everything from falling in.
It may be things like you're talking about, like vegetation, maybe a little dirt, concrete dirt, I don't know, something to keep that intact as much as you can. But eventually, over time, it will erode. That's just a given, the way, the condition that it's in, and the amount of water that comes out of that dam during these heavy storms.
So
It's
I think-
quite a bit.
So I think going back to this is something that we've been watching over the last couple weeks, maybe even 2 or 3 months. And I'm gonna be blunt, there's nobody sitting up here that knows that we don't have the money to do both of these. So I think it's one of those things that the lakes continue to be put on the back burner, I don't know how many times, but at some point Mike's gonna need to know whether or not he's continually moving forward, because in each report, I report that at the end of July, we're gonna be doing this, and we're gonna be doing this, and we're gonna have all this information for the lakes, and at this point, I don't know that we're moving forward, doing, you know, continually paying Mike to do something that's not gonna be valid 5 years from now. I'm being the messenger of bad news today, and you guys didn't know this, and
I mean, I don't think we have to have a big conversation. I think this thing is gonna fall apart, let's just do it. We have, it's probably an easier, more palatable thing for us to do, so, yeah.
because it's not gonna be cheap. I think we've
No.
discussed that a little bit, and
But it's cheaper than a lake dredging that we're
yes,
already.
well, I would hope. Mike's not even started that yet.
Okay, pave it with gold. What's that Japanese thing where you?
Yeah, you restore all the breakages and there's the beauty of it.
Do we have a greater chance of getting some grants or funding to cover a project like that?
I think a lake
If we
is a
do
better
with
bet.
dredging like, you know?
I don't even
I'm not
know,
holding you to anything, I just.
What do you think?
I don't know what kind of grant that would even be.
I feel like a lake beautification is like way more like, hey, please give us grant money, instead of like, hey, our dam's falling apart.
The challenge you guys have, if I would be very blunt, is these aren't lakes.
Yes, I agree.
They're ponds. They're stormwater ponds. So everything you're trying to get money for is a
Is enough.
sewer
Yeah.
system improvement.
Right.
So all the grants out there are for restoring ecological life. Well, you can't tell that, you can't, in good faith, say, this thing was teeming with fish, and you know, so we're trying to restore the ecology. You know, so that's usually where a lot of the grants are. They're in like 4-bay improvements, which is just shaving around the edges of a dredging project. I mean, this is basically, dredging is a very expensive version of cleaning and televising a sewer.
Oh, that's a nice one to say.
For this, for what you have, that it's storm sewer maintenance. I mean, It's storm sewer maintenance. It's no different than just dropping the camera in there and then cleaning, right? So, I mean, if you think about it in that perspective, it's not too difficult to understand why
Why
it's
we
been a
can't- why
challenge to
we-
find grant money for these particular projects.
And we've used Ben, which is amazing, and Ben has not been able to find us
Can we turn
anything.
our pond into a lake? What can live in it? Currently, nothing.
We have turtles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the turtles, they're endangered.
People.
I think it
Well,
makes
sure.
a lot more sense to go ahead with the lake restoration project as we're planning, and then that south side can, when the time comes, we'll address that, like, and you're asking us basically if we had a choice to pick between one or the two, just to be clear?
Okay.
I'm kind of saying that, I
Yeah,
just, yeah,
financially, it's
I
not
guess
fair.
here's, if I'll just,
be blunt.
people hate to say it, but everything comes down to dollars.
Right.
Yep.
You guys can pay us, we currently have $130,000. We are more than happy to continue with the dredging project. We may spend $130,000 to put a project on the shelf that you'll never build. And then while we're spending that $130,000, you're gonna have to come up with more money to pay somebody, hopefully us, but to pay somebody to design that thing down there. That is probably a larger priority. So I guess the question is, are you comfortable? Like I said, we're very excited to do this. I have been trying to clean up this lake, sorry,
For 20
these
years.
ponds,
Yeah, don't.
since I started here in 2005.
So what,
So I am very excited to do it. I mean, we've brought people in from California to help you guys do it. We've brought people in from Minnesota to help you guys try to do it. And this is the closest we've ever been. So trust me when I say, maybe you might want to spend your money differently, it's up to you, but when I say that, it's painful to say it because it's the closest we've ever been.
So this is a discussion we need to have like today.
You do not have to have it today.
Well, we should probably.
Yeah, we need
But I
to,
guess what I'm taking away from this conversation is I have put this design team on hold. And I don't think there's any reason to start them up.
With our current issues.
I mean, you're out.
And
Yes,
so,
thank you for being honest and thank you for being realistic.
Well, and I'm gonna point out, and then you can say this, I can't tell, the one thing I remember Stacy saying when it came to the pool and to the lakes is we don't wanna get 50% into this and then not having the money to finish it.
A mud pit or whatever.
So that really resonates with a lot
like I
of,
said, I'm excited to do
Oh, yeah,
it.
I did say that.
But if you think there are
pots of money somewhere that we can find.
better uses for the current money you have now,
Just fix it.
okay, so there are parts of the lake improvement that I would, if we could, I'd like to see continue on.
Like,
Past clearing out trees,
Yeah.
paths
Yeah.
around it, and especially connecting Jordan Road to the rest of the village,
Oh,
through a path.
Yeah.
I believe,
so we're not really talking about dredging, but maybe you'll balance it.
well,
Sidewalk. No,
No.
you can't do one without the other.
you are.
what's that,
Because
say what?
You can't do one without the other.
we're getting into all the slides that I want to talk about. So if you want to connect Jordan Road, like we've talked about, you have two options. One is to figure out either running your path from Jordan Road all the way down the west side of the lake. Well, I'll call it lakes because that's what we're calling it. But you have to run a
West
path,
side of the
you have to run a path down the west side of the North Lake.
Right.
And there's an inlet, like there's a jut out
Right.
that you have to cross.
Right.
Bridge.
To cross that with a bridge is going to cost you, my guess is the bridge itself will cost you $400,000 to $500,000. Right? And that's without any, and that's just the bridge itself. Because if you guys recall, we were asked to write a tech memo about replacing pedestrian bridges
Yes.
over here in the MI development. Those two bridges, which are only 30 feet long, at that time, which is now 2 years ago, had a cost estimate, construction cost, just the bridge itself, of nearly $350,000 a piece. Right? Each. So that's one route. The other route is to cut across the northern part of the North Lake which is double the span. So you're probably looking at a $600 to $700, if not more, $1,000 bridge, and then doing all the paving work. Now, if you go to do anything in the lake, which is what we discussed, which is filling a little bit of the north lake, so that we didn't have to build a bridge, but we were just putting a pedestrian path. So what we were gonna do is we were gonna fill in some of the, like, basically build an extension to the project that we completed in 2021, and then backfill that and put a path over there. So now you got a cross, you got from the west side of the lake to the east side of the lake, which is where you really wanna be. You wanna come on the east side of the lake if you can, because it brings you more aligned with that intersection and gets you closer to the swimming pool. Once you start filling in that lake, once you start putting dirt in the lake, you have to get a permit. And then the only way you get a permit is to either say, this is the only job we're gonna do, which you can do, but then it means to do anything else outside of that, you then need another permit.
How much does the permit cost?
The permit is not, I don't even know if there's a permit fee, it's very low. It's just, a nationwide permit is a 6-month process of just permit review time.
But that sounds more realistic.
Oh.
But we gotta talk about that.
Yeah, you get, I would just say that would not be the most cost-effective use of your construction dollars, because you're bringing in large pieces of equipment, basically dredging equipment, to not do a lot of it.
And just.
But I don't disagree with Councilman's, like, there are some parts that if we had if you asked us to do it, and we commit dollars to it, we could look at carve-outs and see if there's a way to do things.
Okay, so can we, and I'm just saying this, I mean, it's obviously 8:15. Is this something then maybe the next 30 to 60 days, we could get you to come back and do a revisit of the lakes versus that, solely just those two things, like what can we do? Because one question then I go back to is, I don't wanna do this, but what if we did focus just on the North Lake that's never been done, which we said was a waste of time, but if we could just, he's gonna have a heart attack, if we could figure out how to dredge that, do the walking path, do all of that, and that project, not this big one. I don't know that it financially, it would be
I
feasible.
think that's still like $1 million.
I'm sure it is, but, again,
Just dredging the North Lake was nearly $2 million.
Was it two?
It's like.
So he goes-
$2 million.
Dad just looked at us and said that.
Dad's so mad.
So
But
so
just
what
a
I-
conversation.
I guess so what I want to say is to, Councilman Corr, it's not dismissible out of hand.
To still do the still do the tree survey, still find out what needs cut out.
Yeah, the trees, I would move ahead with
Yeah.
that, because if you recall, one of the tech memos that we wrote was, we strongly recommend that the village implement an urban forestry program, and one of the first things you should do is you should figure out how you can clean up trees,
Yeah.
especially on village-owned property, because there's a lot of trees that shouldn't be where they are.
If we don't remove the trees, the lake's just gonna continue in here.
That's-
We gotta do something
Yeah.
to slow the erosion of the bottom down, yeah.
I-
But I feel like as representing the village, as council people, I think that there is a great ask from our Jordan Road residents to connect the village, and I think we still have to kind of keep that in mind.
I think that's a very, continuing with the trees, I think is a prudent use of dollars.
Yeah.
It's not geared only toward the dredging project. It actually is for the long-term health and long-term benefit
Right.
of
Right.
the village's ecosystem.
So I think, my personal opinion is that we do some of the pre-work before the dredging, is what we can find the money for and do. I think at one point we were trying to get 850,000 or so from the government. I know that kind of went to tank and we're trying to get the money again, but if we had that money, that would pay for that path.
Right. Okay.
That we've talked about, right? That's one project out of
Right.
the 3 or 4 that I think we can do that's not the dredge, that's the
Right.
huge expense of this, right? Let's try to make some of those small improvements and focus on what we're gonna have to spend money on no matter what.
So Jeff and I talked about the tree survey, so that'll be step number 1. We have all 3 estimates, we have everything. we were going to go back over them one more time, because they're within dollars, like, we're really talking about dollars, so we just have to pick one, that's it. So we will do the tree survey, if we can get that done next week, we'll get the PO and get somebody at least on the books. And then we'll get moving on that, so.
And again, we talked about the, like adding, I don't know what it was called, but the pipes that run into the road. We've talked about adding that to the street project when we get
Yes.
to Minerva Lake Road. That's still improving the lake
Something, yeah.
overall, right?
I just lied on that
And
too.
maybe down the road, someone will generously donate the money we need to fix the giant pond.
Yep.
I need to let council know that
Bob, we're going with Bob. Sorry, Dad.
when the maintenance building is finished, you have under $900,000 left in bond proceeds for whatever work you're gonna do downstream or with the lakes. We have no other source of funding for this.
Can that be used for the,
Yes,
okay,
that's why Mike.
that's what I thought, I just was.
The decision, do we carry on with the lakes or do we fix downstream?
Yeah.
Okay?
We've got to fix downstream, it's just gonna cost us more.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna cost us.
Yeah, the longer it takes to make decisions on this stuff, the more it costs, and the less money left in the treasury to do anything.
Yeah.
Right now, if we can't find a source of revenue that we don't have to pay back
Right.
to do work at the lakes, we can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're at anyways. We don't have to fund
I'm saying,
it, so.
Continue to do things that maintain the around it, even if we can't remodel the house,
Yeah.
you know? Like, we still gotta paint the walls on occasion.
And I
I'm
just,
sure they don't let us cave in.
and I just,
Yeah, for
you
sure,
know,
as much as possible.
I mean, as an American, as the longest serving person here with me on the dais is as the American attest, like,
You made it.
when I see situations like this, like, I want to make sure that I'm telling you, like, I don't want to spend your money
Yeah, that's okay.
until you, like, I don't want you to be like, I don't want to be like, well, you gave me a contract, I'm just gonna go forward. I mean, if you realistically think continuing with what we're doing on the dredging project is a good use of your 130,000, I'll do it, man, like I said, I'm excited. But also, if you say, shoot, we kind of need to rob Peter to pay Paul. Unlucky for Peter, but Paul needed the attention.
I know, I looked at the email that I had sent you, and I didn't send it with any, clarity initially, which scared you. And then I have a video of it, and you can just watch the dam just, it hits that and it spreads.
That's in October or something, right?
It was April of 2024. On a day we got 2 inches of rain. And it was a record for that day, but, 2 inches of rain.
I remember I remember April was a bad month, but.
And those, those things in the dam, they remind me of, it's like they don't allow the water to go fast and out. I'm like, man, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Okay, so.
Okay, so we're fixing the dam because Mike said we need to, and it's a better use for money. I don't know, like, I don't know what the, okay, next.
And I think at the next one, we just revisit the lakes again
Yeah,
and just
and
talk
we
about it,
figure
just so
out what the T-Mobile option for the lake is, got it.
Might be the garage sale option. So task order, I assume I can go on to the next.
Yes,
Task order number 32 is the 2024 CCTV analysis. So that's just analyzing CCTV results that Gisu Sewer, for the work that they did in 2024, make recommendations for future projects and then update the GIS sewer information. The reason that we didn't finish this project in 2024 was because there were some issues with Gisu Sewer being able to complete some of the work up in the Jordan Road area because the sewer maps indicate that there's sewers there, but they couldn't find manholes to actually do their work. And so we were trying to put forth a lot of effort. We asked DJ,
excavating.
I was gonna say DJ.
No, it's deep.
It's DJ.
I know, yeah.
I can't remember his name now. I know his name, but it's we asked them to do a little bit of work for us. They moved some stones for us because we thought manholes were under big stones, but they weren't there. So we were kind of going back and forth with the contractor, and then we just said, you know what, we're just gonna have to call it good, right? And so if we need to get sewer stuff, we'll do it later in 2025. So you can see as of May 23rd, our total fee was $16,000. We've invoiced $16,000, or $16,500. We've invoiced $16,500. Actually, it's like $16,498 technically. So we're done. We're not invoicing anymore on that project. We actually still do have a little bit of work to do on it. Basically, we need to finalize the report and then just update the overall plan for the village, and then basically say, okay, here's where it stands. So a little bit of work left that we owe you. The last phrase there, last part of the bullet point, the potential 2025 scope, I was kicking around the idea of including this with the 2025 storm sewer improvements project that we were asked to look at it in 2023 to do it in 2024, and we postponed it in 2024 because there wasn't enough funding in the storm sewer, and we were trying to figure out what was going on with the Jordan Road area project and just seeing what revenue was available for the village. So it looked like we might be okay to do a 2025 project. I might as well just go to this next slide. So 2025 storm sewer improvements, the project overview was just to correct deficiencies in the storm sewer that we had identified in earlier CCTV cycles. Basically lining, so you just put it's called a cast in place liner. So you put a CIPP, you basically blow this liner in and you blow it out, and then you heat it, and it basically lines the inside of the pipe so you don't have to completely replace the pipe. There are some point repairs, that's places where you actually have to dig down and actually cut out a piece of pipe and make a repair, and then you come back in and line it after the fact. We had a $14,000 fee for that in 2023, actually. We had started work and paused it, so when we restarted the work, we had about $11,000 left. We've invoiced to date about $8,700. So our total amount remaining is about $5,200. The project status I have listed is the construction budget is $200,000, and the bidding documents are about 95% complete. Basically just going through QC review. So I noted that the next steps were to complete the bidding documents and coordinate the bidding schedule with the village. So just say, okay, here's when we intend to do it, here's our recommended legislation schedule, etc. We anticipated advertising either in late June or early July. You have to work around the July 4th holiday. It's not difficult to work around, but it's a day that counts against you in the bidding window. And the village typically likes to accept bids on Fridays. So July 4th just happens to be a Friday, which then meant normally we allow 22 days for bidding windows in the village. That's the minimum statutory bidding period, I believe. This would probably just been like a 29-day. We would have extended it by a week. So it wasn't hard, but we were going to work it out. What I intended to do was get that project going, get it out to bid, get a contractor on board, and then approach that contractor and say, hey, we also have this additional CCTV work we would like you to do.
Okay.
We can do that because it's non-bid work. Like, we normally do not have to bid out that CCTV work because its money doesn't cross the minimum bidding threshold.
Okay.
So that was my intent. Obviously, I would have confirmed it with legal counsel first, but that was the intent, because that contractor has to do their own CCTV work anyway. So if they're already going to have the equipment out here, you probably could get a pretty good rate because they were already anticipating being out here. Talking to fiscal before the meeting, because of the OPWC machinations, the village is paying more money out of pocket than we thought we were doing in late November. There's about $300,000 plus or minus.
41,000 is the storm sewer.
So about $350,000 of the Minerva Lake Road project is actually storm sewer. So that, as Jeff mentioned earlier, that's one of the funding sources for the project. So because of that, I think it's fair to say we're uncomfortable committing $200,000 of storm sewer money to a project this year because we're not quite sure that the stormwater utility credit is gonna generate enough cash to make up the difference between here and then. So what fiscal and I discussed is we're just gonna postpone this project and see where the storm sewer funds are sitting at the end of 2025 and with a reasonable projection for, say, mid-2026 when we reach construction.
Correct. Question, you think, nothing bad's gonna happen, right, if we do this one?
These are, if we do not do this, is that what you're- these are not priority 1 repairs, these are not condition grade D repairs.
Just for the record,
These are lower priority.
yeah,
Some of them may be priority 2s. You know, we do 1 to 4, and then grade is A to D. So there were some priority 2s with maybe some condition grades of C, but nothing that was like, like immediate repair. So I'm comfortable if we want to postpone it 1 more year. If we get into 2026 and working with Jeff and we say, hey, realistically, we only have this much money in 2026, we can reduce this project and be very targeted if we need, if we're like, hey, we don't want to let these 5 things go.
yeah,
Now, I know I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth there, you want to do as much work as you can when the contractor comes out, but if there's only so much money that you can spend, then you just say, let's make it the best money that we can spend at that time.
and then, so I just wanna make sure we're prudent with this, but I also wanna make sure that we're not putting ourselves behind on that schedule that can, then result in additional repair work due to deferred maintenance. So just for the record, I just wanna make sure that this is not what's happening. This is, we're just trying to make it as fiscally responsible as possible, and these projects can wait, and when we can find them, it'll be a better deal.
And what we would do is in lieu of asking a storm sewer improvements contractor to do this year's CCTV program, we'll go forward with the CCTV program per the usual. We'll develop 2 scopes of work. We'll solicit proposal for those scopes of work, and then
Sure.
there is the appropriate amount of funding in the storm sewer fund to cover a CCTV program.
Okay, and then I guess the other thing is there any other part of the village, even though we have a schedule, is there any one of them that needs to be scoped a little bit earlier, that needs to skip the line? Because I feel like we've been hearing a little bit more from the Kerwood part of the village that they're having a little bit more issues, so I don't know if that needs to be addressed or if we'll talk about that.
I'm not 100% sure where in the cycle that area is.
Yeah.
Part of the stuff we were looking at for this project, it was along East Shore Drive and starting to kick around that corner. But I think we've televised that stuff recently.
Yeah, just because I heard that it seems that we're having a little bit more of an issue than we thought, and despite it being televised 2 years ago, it seems that it's changed. So
We'll take a look at it, and if we need to
change our
if we
word.
need to add scope, we can always do that too.
Yeah, I just don't want to do one thing. You know how it is. I'm very paranoid.
No, that's
Like
fine.
this liner fix, how long does that typically last? What's the lifespan on that type of fix?
I think they're expected to last in excess of 50 years.
Okay.
What are they made out of? Is it like plastic?
It's a plastic. It's a plastic. Yeah, it's like it's a plastic that basically it just kind of rolls out. Like it comes in a coil, and you just roll it out, and then you blow it into the pipe,
Oh, I've seen that.
and then you kind of inflate it a little bit, and then you heat it up, and then it hardens.
And then you take out the lining. Yeah, it's like a gel. It looks like blue.
Well, the liner stays in. It adheres to the pipe itself. It basically becomes the pipe wall.
Pretty
So
fascinating.
these are good fixes for
Oh, yeah.
and will give us a good life.
Yeah, we've gone back in through some of the sanitary sewers that we replaced this, using this method, 2000, I think our first sewer project was 2018 maybe. So those areas have gone back into the CCTV cycle, and they're just all clean, they're all priority, basically 4, condition grade A, continue to monitor. And it's a very common. I
Yeah,
mean, the company, like the bigger companies that do this do hundreds of thousands of feet of this throughout the United States every year.
I'll send you a video, it's really
This
cool.
is a Band-Aid, this is really good.
Yeah, like mining is a legitimate fix. Yeah.
Once this resin hardens, it's like, I mean, it is solid. Then it's, air blows in, it just kind of expands and it pushes out this gel membrane type. And once it hardens, it's way stronger than anything that was in this original metal pipes, ceramic pipes, plastic, what have you. Pretty cool stuff.
As long as it has a good face to adhere to.
Yeah,
And it actually bridges openings too, like it bridges pipe openings.
yeah,
Like if there's a little hole in the top of the
It's
pipe.
like a stent.
It's basically a stent.
yeah.
Look at that.
To stick to council member cost terms, it's a, it's a stent.
Can we use not plastic?
All right, task order number 34, we obviously have already talked about that. Task order number 35, 2025 water line improvements. So this was basically a set aside. This was like a $3,000 set aside to do a little bit of research to perhaps develop a project, identify a project for work in the village. So this is to review water line information, so the drawings, the maintenance reports, information like that, to determine if a water line replacement project is recommended in East Shore Drive, Kerwood Drive, East Shore, or North Lake Court area. I think the address may be 2620 Kerwood Drive. I think it's on the corner. So their address is Kerwood Drive, but I think they may actually be served by the water line coming off of North Lake. I think there were some water problems in that residential area. There was I think it might have been a problem with the fire hydrant that maybe had a water main break on East Shore Drive. But it's in that area, like it's all in that stretch. Well, first you can see, like I said, it was a $3,000 set aside. To date, we've only expended $985, so we basically have $2,000 left. We've tracked down all the information we can as far as record documents. We've tracked down all the information we can from the city of Columbus. We've had conversations with the city of Columbus recently about what they saw when they did some of this water line repair work out there. Right now, my intent is to recommend replacing the water line that serves North Lake Court. It's the direction I'm leaning right now. We're kicking around, we feel confident in that water line. A lot of the water lines in the village were replaced about 25 years ago, so I think the village recently just maybe made one of the last loan payments on the water line replacement. So whenever you saw in the budgets and everything, when you saw like the fund names for like water line phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, that was a 4-phase massive water line replacement project in the village. It did a lot of the village, but it didn't do all of the village. And so one of the areas that wasn't replaced, as best we can tell from all the documentation in those pipes, or in those drawings, was not East Shore Drive, which stands to reason. It means somewhat newer than other parts of the village. Other water lines in the village were installed, circa early 1930s. So, those water lines were, when they were replaced, they were, 80-ish years old. I think the water line running along East Shore Drive, I think it was installed around, well, let's just say mid-1960s, I think is the date on the plans. So you're looking in the 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, so it's getting up there. We generally assume water lines can last about 100 years, which is pretty common. Some are much older, but that's generally the rule of thumb that the industry says. Considering there's been some water main breaks, there's been that particular resident has had issues multiple times. And if you look at the break report, that particular address shows up multiple times on the break report. So there's.
And that's the resident that came in that day.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if everybody was here, that might have been before your guys'
That's what
time,
I'm
but.
talking about, is like.
So there's
that
been
working.
something there. We've been trying to monitor, like we weren't ignoring it, but we were like, let's
see what happens.
One thing is, one break is a one-off, and you don't want to jump too much at it unless it's obviously something that needs to be fixed. But, you should just say, okay, the city of Columbus came in, they made a repair, it's probably fine, right? But if it happens multiple times, then you kind of start needing to look, and we didn't want to just say, let's just fix this water line. I mean, if water line on Shore Drive needed replaced or something, then we're like, okay, this is a bigger issue. So we're gonna try to get our arms around it a little bit. So I feel confident now that we're gonna recommend a water line replacement for North Lake Court. Now, here's where it gets here's where it becomes a decision-making process. The first thing, or the next thing that we need to do is confirm if the existing water line is in the pavement or outside the pavement. And the reason that comes into play is because if it's outside the pavement, so if it's going on either the east, northish side of North Lake Court or southish side of North Lake Court, if it's outside the pavement, then you can really just focus on primarily a water line replacement project. You just replace the water main. Yeah, you have to, trench across East Shore Drive and do some pavement repair there, but generally you're going through someone's yard and stuff like that. If it's in the pavement, and we don't want to rely on what the record drawings show, because that doesn't mean that's where it got built. If it's in the pavement, so maybe it's running more or less like down the middle of North Lake Court. Well, then by the time you actually excavate to put in a water line, and you do all the work, maybe the conversation turns into doing a paving project too. Because if you want to try to keep it in the same general location, then you for a 20-ish foot wide road, you may be making a 10+ foot wide cut. And so at that point, you just say, well, maybe we make it a water line project, and then maybe it's like a mill and fill project. We could confirm if the sub base is good. I don't have the PCA scores pulled up in front of me. I think North Lake Court has a relatively good score in the pavement condition assessment. So, you may look at it and be like, yeah, well, while we're here, let's just do a paving project. Then it turns into some other stuff associated with North Lake Court. Look at Google Maps and see what's in the middle of the bulb and tell them,
So I will say that we've had some discussions around the courts, and not to put words in everyone's mouth, but I think there is a general consensus that we remove those as we do street projects in the future.
I didn't want to be the one that's necessary. I know council, I should say I was aware that council and admin staff has discussed it, but I didn't want to be the one to
We've talked
let
about
the cat out of the bag, just in case.
they're not fun to maintain because they're village property, and the curbs are being run over. I think when they were built, people didn't park on the street as much. People probably didn't have as many cars in each family, and now
Better
you have
drivers.
multiple people park on the street. You got delivery vans coming
Yeah.
through.
Much
trucks.
higher traffic.
Yes.
I mean, just even, like you said, more people parking on the streets, but now you have way more delivery trucks.
Why'd you look at me when you said
Like,
that?
you have Amazon deliveries, you have FedEx deliveries, UPS deliveries, you have the garbage trucks that are trying to get.
The garbage trucks and.
Fire trucks, snow plows.
They're getting
I'm not
bigger
sure
and
any
bigger.
larger vehicle, like driver lights, those things, and they're not built to today's standards. Like if you were to build that court today, and you did want to put a center island in there, it would be much bigger because you have a much bigger turning radius. So that's what I'm saying. Like if it's in the road, then we have a slightly different conversation with you, just because you might want to do something more while you're there. So.
We've had that discussion, and I think
Eliminate it.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of,
It is.
resident concerns about
I've been over there like 5 minutes.
them getting run over and destroyed, and
Yeah.
most of them are crumbled, the edges are starting to crumble because they're running over them so much, the tire marks are in there, and then they want them fixed, and we just don't have the manpower to go
Yeah.
reconstruct them every Tuesday after trash pickup.
So the next step for me is just to coordinate with the mayor to see if we can get the village's contracted utility locator to just mark the line for us. And then we'll get it, like, yeah, that's.
Is that just the Bloodhound one?
Yeah, I think you can just call it.
When do you want us to, I mean, is that something we can just do it?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll get with Eric and have him.
And the reason I would recommend, the reason I'm asking you, the reason I'm asking the village to do it is because I don't want to put in an oops ticket.
Okay,
Because I don't need to know where everything else is right now. I just really need to know where the water line is.
so just the water lines
And
from,
if I put in an oops ticket, you're gonna
pay for all of
you're gonna get notified, and then you're gonna call Bloodhound.
it. Yep.
But then we're also gonna get, everybody's gonna come mark those lines.
Yeah.
We don't need that. I just wanna see this one blue stripe.
Okay. We'll handle that next week.
Task order number 36 is the pedestrian path master plan. So the project overview is just developing a master plan for pedestrian routing throughout the village. And so the overall objective is to allow the village to develop a schedule so that you can maybe start budgeting for improvements, but then also you can use this document to help when you apply for outside funding.
Like the Linkus and all that?
Yes,
Okay.
so as Jeff, as the fiscal officer, can attest, I think MORPC and OPWC has been very appreciative, for lack of a better word, that when we're putting PCA scores in these pavement applications, like we did a pavement condition analysis, so we're not just saying this road is in bad shape, we're saying this road's in bad shape and here's the score, and it supports your case. And so if you already have, if you're demonstrating to funding agencies, we have a master plan. They're like, they look at it and say, okay, these guys are already thinking about this, but then also it helps you plan, like, hey, maybe we want to do this section in 5 years or whatever. So that's the ultimate goal, is to basically have an overall layout so that you can see, like, this is what we're going to do. So the total fee is $20,500. We haven't invoiced a dollar on this yet because it's a very new task order within the last, technically in the system within the last month. So we're anticipating starting that in late June. We're hoping to complete that work in the fall of 2025. So realistically, how I envisioned this, how we scoped it, was Jacobs would have a kickoff meeting with the village, and whoever you have attend that meeting is up to the village's request. I guess the only thing I would say there is the same, and legal can correct me if I'm wrong, but we tend to ask people be cognizant of open meeting laws. So, depending on who you invite, triggers things. You don't want to try to hide anything, but it's like, just make sure if you're going to invite a certain number of people, you go through all your notices and advertisements and things like that, so you don't run afoul of any of that stuff. And then sit down with the village and just basically say, let's get your goals in place. Like, what do you think are the most important places to get to? Like, that's the first thing you want to think of. And we don't want to get into details here, but like, when I think of Minerva Park, for me, it's the 3 schools, the municipal building, and the pool. Those are probably the most important destinations in the village. You could probably put in like the basketball court area and the pavilion and stuff. But those are kind of like, and when I say the municipal building, I mean it's this whole area really in general, because now you have the pavilion and stuff like that, right? So what you would want to do is you want to say, okay, here's where we want our residents to be able to go to without having to drive. And then we say, okay, well now let's look at what you have, and then how do you connect everything? And so that would be the goal. And then the deliverable is basically, in effect, like lines on paper. Like we're not getting into detailed design, but it's more just like you're trying to say, we want people to be able to go from this point to this point, and we think this is a realistic route. And then you put in a little bit like, here's what a shared use path would look like, here's what a sidewalk would look like. And then you just look at it and say, okay, this is our guiding principle for going forward. So then you look at it and you say, every project I do from this point forward, how do I rope in my pedestrian master plan? Oh, like we want to connect Cleveland Avenue to State Route 3. We're going to do a roadway project along Minerva Lake Road. Well, to adhere to our principles, we should consider putting in a sidewalk or something, right? So it's there to put it on paper so that you don't have to try to remember everything that you decide.
this is random and this might be going too far into this, but is that where you're gonna determine like